Hi, CFC community. Welcome to session 2 of this course on behavioral frameworks. My name is Shireen Gergis. I'm one of the co-founders of Common Thread, and we're super excited to have you with us for this section. So section 1 is going to be about behavioral design. So what is behavioral design, you might ask? Maybe you've heard this term being used before, but you may not know exactly what it's meant. People use this term differently because it's still a fairly new term in the social and behavior change space. And it's a bit of a mix of terms from different fields. So it really brings human-centered design and behavioral science together and takes the best, we think, of both worlds to combine them into a really neat methodology that really gets to the heart of understanding and designing for people. And so what it takes from human-centered design is putting people's desires, priorities, experiences, and lives really at the center of whatever intervention you're designing. And what behavioral science brings is really understanding the context that drives human behavior and motivation. Why do people do what they do? And it brings those two pieces together to get something that is really impactful and effective in the social and behavior change space. So what exactly does behavioral design draw on? On the human-centered design side, the process of involving users at each stage of the process, both from the research perspective to understand what their challenges are and how they experience those challenges. And it brings tools from ethnographic exploration to more traditional things that you may be familiar with, like interviews or focus group discussions. But the idea here is to really understand how people feel about things, how they might engage with things. And it's really a mix of kind of what people say and what they do. And so we can also use this approach when we are creating a rough prototype where we have an intervention that we might want to test. And so we might want to observe how people engage with it. Are they using it the way that we think they're going to use it? Are they using it the way they told us they were going to use it? In our initial research. And this helps us understand in real life how interventions are going to be used and how effective they're really going to be. Behavioral science draws on the science of psychology and human behavior to understand how people behave and the context that they behave in. And so specifically, how do different contexts influence people's motivations and behaviors? And behavioral science can draw on both qualitative and qualitative research, but it really helps us design solutions that recognize that knowledge and intention are not always sufficient to change behavior. So when we see a CAP study, which really focuses on knowledge and intention, that sometimes might not give us a complete picture of what people think and how they feel. And it really brings in understanding the context of how people are making decisions, because I can make a decision to eat really healthy when I'm on holiday, for example, but I might not eat really healthy in my day-to-day life because I might be more stressed, I might have less time, and I'm the same person and I still believe the same things and I still have the same intentions, but my environment might be triggering me in one way or another to behave differently. And that's what behavioral science helps us to understand. So this is a really great example of how behavioral design kind of brings these two disciplines together. So this is obviously a picture of people crossing the street. And there is a walkway up top there that's been designed to prevent behavior like this from happening because it's dangerous and somebody can get hit by a car. And sometimes what we find in public health in general is that there's really good solutions, or people, the people that design them think they're really good. And they say, well, why aren't people using them? It must be because they don't understand, or there's some problem with the people that we've designed for, right? If there's no problem with the designers, the problem is with people. And oftentimes people get blamed for being part of the problem. And if you were to use user-centered research, for example, or a human-centered design process in this example, or let's say a behavioral design process, you might ask these people why they're crossing the street, and they might say, well, there's too many stairs to go up for that walkway. I have bad knees. I get short of breath. I'm in a rush. It takes too much time to use that walkway. It's too difficult. They may also say, well, it's a very narrow and enclosed space up there, and I don't feel safe as a woman crossing that walkway, especially if I'm by myself, or even if it's in the evening. You can see most of the people in this photo are women, in fact. I think even the first woman may be pregnant. And so it's not really designed completely for the people that we want to use it, and it hasn't taken into account their day-to-day lives and context. So you can see how if we used a behavioral design process, everybody wants to be safe, presumably, but the solution isn't meeting their needs. And so they're creating their own pathway to crossing the street. So this is just a great example of what often happens in public health. Solutions are designed that we really want them to use, but they're not using them. And so people are taking shortcuts, or they're taking alternative methods that may not be very safe or may not be ideal. And so we have to understand how to better design our services so that they have the intended effects, which is that people are crossing the road safely in this situation. So let's talk a little bit more about behavioral science and how it contributes to behavior change. So behavior change is an evidence-based process to address knowledge, attitudes, and practices. It uses well-defined strategies to alter ways of behaving, or a better way to say that might be to promote healthy behavior. Behavior change strategies focus on the individual as the locus of change. So it's looking at how each person thinks, feels, and is influenced to behave in a certain way. Behavior change is complicated. We all know this. If we've ever tried to change our own behavior, we know how hard it can be. But a way that we can think about it really, really simply is this great metaphor, which is to take a rocket ship. And if you think about what it might take to propel a rocket ship into space, you could think about the rocket ship as our current behavior. What is going to get this rocket ship into space, and what might bring it down? What's going to sort of drag it down with friction? And so if you think about how we might sort of design interventions to make the rocket ship go in one way or another, that's a really helpful and simple framework to think about how we might design a behavior change intervention. So to reach space, you've got to reduce friction, which is remove barriers or mitigate them as much as possible, or you can add fuel. So create positive enablers to help that behavior get off the ground. If there's too much friction and not enough fuel, the rocket won't fly. So you can think about our interventions to health. If there's too many barriers and not enough motivators, people are not going to choose the healthy behavior. So let's take this example to the next step. So friction points are anything that might get in the way of immunization, like the health facility being too far, or there's vaccine stockouts. So like gravity to the rocket ship, these are going to make it harder for people to get immunized, and they're going to drag the rocket ship down. But how do we add fuel to this rocket ship? It could be anything that makes immunization more appealing and doable and easy. So sending a reminder to a caregiver the day before an appointment, or even a week before the appointment, can make it easier to schedule that in. Offering transportation to health facilities, making it free, could make it easier. Having a really pleasant experience at that health clinic is going to add fuel. If you're dreading your health clinic appointment, that's just friction, right? That's going to say, oh, that's going to give you a reason to put it off. So just a word of caution that this analogy works when you're promoting a healthy behavior. You want to add fuel and decrease friction. But what if you're trying to stop an unhealthy behavior? Like say you want to stop smoking, for example, that's your objective. So then you want to add friction, right? You want to make it really hard for people to smoke. And you may have seen this in some of your own contexts where there's a lot of taxes on cigarettes. That's an example of adding friction because the behavior is stopping smoking. That's the ideal behavior. So just be careful how you're using the friction and the fuel, and what your ultimate rocket ship behavior is that you want to do. So now that you understand the basics of behavior change, let's talk about social change. Social change is basically a very similar approach as behavior change, but really focuses on the community as the unit of change. And social change uses different tools to influence behavior change as a group. It uses public and private dialogue, it uses debate, it can use media, and it really tries to change behavior on a larger scale than just the individual. And so we use social change when we're looking at kind of social and cultural practices, norms, structural inequalities like power dynamics, gender dynamics. That's when social change is really important, because you need a community to be working together. So social norms are really, really important to influence social change. A social norm is a rule and or a standard that's understood by members of a group that is just sort of common practice. It's just become practice without a law or a policy necessarily. There may have been policies or laws at one point in time. Sometimes policies and laws are a really helpful trigger to change a social norm, but ultimately a social norm kind of feeds itself and fuels itself, and it's governed by people and by sort of common practice. So this is an example of two very different social norms in different countries. And the behavior here is how people wait for trains. And you can see a Japanese social norm is that everybody's lined up, waiting in front of each portal here. And you can see here how the environment may be promoting a desirable social norm. So there is clear markers of where the train is going to stop, and that promotes people to wait in a queue. But also they're used to this. They're seeing everybody else behaving this way. And you can see the social norm in India is that everybody just tries to pile in as quickly as possible, maybe because the train is going to depart at a time that's unknown to people. They don't know where the train's going to start and stop. And so the social norm here is just to move as quickly as possible. So that's a great example of how social norms work. I'm going to show you another example of just how powerful social norms can be and how subconscious they are, and how we don't even sometimes notice how we're influenced and impacted by what other people are doing and how that influences individual behavior. So this is a really great video. It's just going to take 3 minutes, hopefully.
So you walk into an elevator and naturally you turn and face the door, right? It's just what we do without even thinking. All right. In the blue t-shirt, that is Nadia. She is an innocent passerby. Has nothing to do with this. Everybody else in that elevator, they all work for Would You Fall for That? They're all in on the experiment. They're all purposefully facing the wrong way. Nadia is facing the front. You can just see the back of her head wearing the blue t-shirt. That's Nadia. She is facing the front of the elevator like a normal human being. Everybody else is facing the back. We're playing this to you in real time, no editing, as it actually happened. Okay, floor 2. Rebecca gets off, Emily gets on. She also works for us. We're swapping people in and out to reinforce the behavior. Emily's acting like it's the most normal. Oh, Nadia's turned. Nadia, okay, her bag is slipping off her shoulder. She's nervously playing with it. Yeah. Nadia is now halfway round. Will she go any further? Emily gets off, Mike gets on. Again, Mike works for the show. Presses his button, faces the back like it's the most normal thing in the world, like he does it every day. Nadia is really feeling the pressure right now.
I'm not going to see anyone else.
Scott's making some small talk.
He was in celebrity rehab, I think.
Oh. Yeah. She's looking towards the back of the elevator because everybody else is. Floor 4. Fourth floor, Mike gets off. Lauren gets on. Lauren also works for us. He's in. Oh, and Nadia has gone. The 4th floor. Nadia has turned all the way around. She's looking at the back of the elevator. That is not normal human behavior. Nadia is looking at the back of the elevator purely because everybody else is. Okay, you've seen it in real time. Let's play that for you again in fast forward. Nadia, turning, 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 turn.
One program that I rely on fully.
Okay, so that's just a really quick example. We can unpack that. You know, there may be environmental triggers that also caused her to turn around. Maybe she was getting too close to the person next to her. But generally, it's a really good example of how even though individuals may have their own norms and own sort of habits, they can be influenced fairly quickly and fairly surprisingly by how they witness other people to behave or what they think others expect them to do. So behavior and social change are really, really complementary. It's really impactful when you combine behavior change, tactics that focus on individuals as the unit of change with social change tactics that focus on communities and systems. When we only focus on one of these or the other, we may not get the effects that we intend to have. So you can miss the context, you can miss the sort of cultural norms and the value of those when you're looking at only the individual. And when you're only focusing on the system, you may miss out important individual views and habits or norms that are important to actually cause individuals to change their behavior. So powerful to include the two of these. And so how do we kind of use these approaches to be really structured in how we're designing interventions? So theories and models can be really, really helpful to ensure that we are using evidence to inform our theories and that we're not missing any important influencing factors that could be entry points for behavior change interventions. So what we want to do is try to pick a theory that seems to fit with a hypothesis. So what do we think might be happening in a certain context? And then it's more important that you use a theory to guide your interventions than which theory you use. People get really hung up over which theory should I use. And there's a lot of debate about this, but at Common Thread, we believe it's more important to just pick a theory and be systematic in how you design an intervention than in picking the wrong theory. So there are so many different theories that you can choose from, which does tend to overwhelm people. And we're going to just focus this session or these sessions on 3 that are really important. And the 3 of these can you can mix and match different pieces of them. And why we chose these 3 is because they're pretty fundamental in the public health space. And we think that these are going to be really, really valuable tools for you. So the first model is the health belief model. The second one is the increasing vaccination model. It's also been called BESD. WHO has spearheaded this model. And then there's socio-ecological model. So these are 3 of many, many other models, which you may have seen, like the COMBI, the behavior change wheel, social network and support theory. There's so many models, but we're just going to focus on 3 and stay tuned for the next session, which is going to go into these 3 models in more depth. Thank you.